Good morning, guys. Welcome to this episode number 15? So many episodes, I don't even remember, of the RDO Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jason Montcalm, with my brother and co-host, Alex Montcalm. How are you, brother?
I'm good, thank you.
Bit of a disappointing result for Queensland last night in the State of Origin.
So I didn't watch it. I went out for dinner with the boys.
Again, no one's surprised you didn't watch it. Oh, actually, by the way, before we start too, any of you that are playing the RDO Podcast drinking game, I hope you enjoy it.
Oh yeah,
Have a good time.
I had dinner with the boys. It was on in the background, and I saw a bit of argy-bargy, and I did see
a bit of new school argy-bargy.
It was off in the distant, but from what I could see, they got demolished.
Yeah, that was probably the result that everyone was expecting in the first game. New South Wales just showed up to play. They showed up to play. They played really well. Nathan Cleary, the young halfback from New South Wales, he got heaps of criticism last game. Right. A mate of mine, Dave, actually said this yesterday, and he's a big sports guy. Actually has his own podcast, the Young Podcast, all about sports. He described Nathan Cleary yesterday as potentially being the next Mitchell Pearce, which is like one of the worst things that you can say.
Right.
Because Mitchell Pearce, what he's sort of notorious for was he was this young guy. He was the son of a legend in Wayne Pearce. All the talent in the world, so much pressure on his shoulders though, thrown into the top levels too young, and I think it mentally smashed him because he was thrown up against like your Jonathan Thurston,
the best,
Cooper Cronk, Cameron Smith era of Queenslanders, and then he shouldered all the blame for years for New South Wales losing all the time. Right. And then just like now he's come good, but now he's towards the back end of his career. Yeah. So he's an amazing club player, but just not at that level. So yeah, he described Nathan Cleary like that, and I was like, it's actually kind of half a good point. And you just because his dad Ivan Cleary is actually his coach at the Panthers. Right. So he amazing young player, but yeah, really good to see him bounce back because he'd sort of had a couple of probably the worst games you could have in a row. So he plays for the Panthers. They killed it the entire season, got to the grand final. It was the first game of the season where he had a poor game. Right. Just his execution wasn't there, so they lose the grand final. So he's lost the biggest game of his life at that point. And then the next game he plays after that is Origin 1, which again, he's part of a star-studded New South Wales team that's supposed to walk all over Queensland. Sure. He had a poor game and they lost. Yeah. So mentally it's like...
And all the eyes are on him.
Yeah, 100%. And so it's like, how's he going to get up for this game? But to his credit, man, he killed it. Absolutely killed it last night.
Yeah, I couldn't care less.
Yeah, I know.
Couldn't care less. Here, I'm just going to turn the light on too.
Yeah, sweet.
Keep talking.
So, just to give you an update on the weight loss challenge at the moment too. So, I've stagnated a little bit. So, I'm still at 102.4. I weighed in this morning, which I think this is week 6 or something like that. So, slightly behind target. So, my target was 1 kilo per week. So, I've done 5 kilos in 6 weeks now because I've sort of been around this level for the last 3 weeks. Or 2.5 weeks. I do feel like part of it is, part of it is just natural evening out.
We knew that was going to happen.
We knew it was going to happen. Part of it is because I bought my new weights a couple of weeks ago. I've been lifting some heavier weights than I have been normally. Sure. And I think because of muscle memory, I've already put back a little bit of muscle that I previously lost. And part of it's obviously because Sober October's over, so I've had a couple of drinks, but I've also, Aldi has brought back their Christmas fudge as well, which I will be going to buy some more today before we go home.
You could just grab some out of my drawer.
It's so good, man.
Canadian maple, have you tried that one?
I'm not a fan of the maple.
Oh yeah.
I love the butter fudge.
The butter fudge.
Yeah. Aldi, start sponsoring us already.
You should sponsor us.
Yeah.
It's probably the most viewed website, besides like my bank. And like my business, it'd be Aldi Special Buys is the next.
Which that's a really smart marketing tool, right? Like,
what sponsor us?
Well, yeah, that for a start. But having those like smart buys where it's whoever would have thought that a grocery store will have something different every week or
where you can buy those bongo drums and a unicycle.
Yeah, exactly right. Like it's amazing marketing. It's really, really smart.
Well, it kind of is a bit of a segue into what I want to talk about today. What's the date today? Is it
the 12th of November?
12th of November 2020.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to talk about Bitcoin.
Now, do you want to talk about, is it Bitcoin or are you talking about cryptocurrency in general?
I don't want to go deep into crypto. I want to stay with the OG at the moment.
Okay.
And then maybe we'll delve into it in the future if people want to know. Because it can get super nerdy.
Yeah.
Like this, I've already written some notes down there and trying to keep it as palatable as possible.
Right.
Because I can see people's eyes roll on the back of their heads. But it's extremely exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I want to start, the big thing I've written in caps at the top there is, don't buy Bitcoin.
Right.
Don't buy it.
Okay.
Don't buy it.
So what's Bitcoin at now?
21,500 Australian dollars.
21.5. Okay. Yep.
Okay. So last time, reason why I'm saying don't buy Bitcoin is because everyone that it was in my network that listened to me back in the day. So I've had Bitcoin since 2016 is when I got into it.
Yep.
And people thought it was crazy, and people, like, I went through all the stages of, it's a scam and rah rah rah, and it has done very, very well for me. Mm-hmm. But what I want to say, the reason why I'm saying don't buy is because it's way too hot now.
Yeah.
The last spike that it had was 2017,
mm-hmm.
and we're almost to where it got to. We're
Yep.
3 or 4 grand away from where it got to in December 17,
mm-hmm.
and that's when everyone got in.
Mm.
So all these people jumped on it, and then they went, oh, and like then it just took this massive nosedive, and everyone's like, oh, I've lost all this money.
Yeah.
And I just said, just keep it, it'll come back.
Yeah.
And it's coming back, so it's going to be huge. So don't buy it. Don't buy it. Keep an eye, like look at it.
Yeah.
If you're interested in investing or interested in the technology, look at it now, but do not buy now. Please do not buy now, because look, in my opinion, it's going to go up, but.
So, okay, let's say this. Don't not buy now. Do your own research. Make your own decision. So, I'm only saying that because if it does go to the moon, you don't want to be the guy
but it will.
not to buy.
It will. No, but I told everyone to buy and they had the shits.
Yeah.
Right? But if they would have kept it, they'll be happy now.
But you need to understand, it's anytime you speak in absolutes on the internet, you're going to give people the shits. It's just how it works.
Don't buy it.
Or do buy it.
Or do. Who cares? It's only money.
Just don't spend all your money on it.
Yeah. So I thought I'd do just a really quick history on it for those, the uninitiated.
So I'm not a big crypto guy.
Yeah.
So I was considering this week when you mentioned talking about it, doing some research and getting into it, and I thought, you know what, I don't want to. I just want to roll in so you can talk to me as someone who is fairly limited in knowledge of cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, and blockchain.
Yep, cool.
Because I think for me, blockchain is the most interesting part of all of it.
Absolutely, and that fits into Internet 2.0, which has been a bit of a theme of our podcast. It absolutely fits in with that.
Yep.
So, the year is 2009.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we've just come out of the global financial crisis.
Yep.
Global financial crisis was because basically banks loaned too much money to too many people on too many things that had no chance of buying back, and the economy crashed.
Go and watch The Big Short.
One of my favourite
really
movies.
good movie.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, before we get into this, speaking of movies.
Oh, yes.
So, because it's super relevant right now, we are going to... Next week's episode is going to be a bit of a special one. We're actually going to do a movie review. But we're going to do a movie review on a movie that was released in 2006, I think it was, called Idiocracy, starring Luke Wilson.
Yep.
Now,
Terry Crews.
Yeah, Terry Crews. Anyone else big in it? Dax Shepard. Yeah. So you might be wondering why we're doing a movie review of a movie released in 2006. If you haven't seen it, the general premise of the movie is...
Don't even talk about the premise.
Alright, let's not go into it. But
it's just relevant.
Yeah, as homework, what you guys need to do is you need to watch the movie within the next week, because we will be doing a review of Idiocracy and how accurate its predictions were in 2020.
We'll find out what platform it's on, and we'll post it on socials.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure you can even get on YouTube by now.
Yeah, but if you don't want to have to pay for it, you might have it. So we'll check.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah,
anyway,
watch it.
But yeah, Idiocracy with Luke Wilson.
So the year's 2009, GFCs happened and we're on the way out of it. A white paper makes it onto the internet.
Yeah.
A white paper from a guy named Satoshi Nakamoto. No one knows who this person is. They don't know if it's a man, woman, child, organization, group.
Elon Musk.
They don't know. No one knows. Okay, there's all this conjecture. But it basically outlined a currency that could be used worldwide, peer-to-peer, on the blockchain. When I say peer-to-peer, it means when I want to buy something from you, I send the funds directly to you, or if you buy something from me, you send the funds directly to me, away from governments, away from banks.
Yeah.
Okay, that was the whole idea, so that we could take ownership of our own financial security.
Yeah.
It was done on the blockchain because it was the most secure way. It uses cryptography. Cryptography is just lines of text. Okay, lines of text that would take a computer 10,000 years to break. It's extremely secure.
Yeah.
The blockchain is basically just a record hold of every single transaction that happens.
So they call it like a ledger.
It's a ledger.
Yeah.
It's a ledger. It's a digital ledger. Now, it was basically reserved for hackers. Hackers are the only people that got really exposed to it in 2009. They were dabbling with it. They were buying. They would buy computer parts off each other or stuff like that. There was a very famous story that came out recently where a guy paid 35,000 Bitcoin. He just put on a blog somewhere and said, I think it was 2010. He's like, I'll give 35,000 Bitcoin to anyone that just delivers me 2 pizzas. I don't care if you make them, I don't care if you send them. If you send me 2 pizzas, you can have 35,000 Bitcoin, which at the time...
Have I got my calculator?
Yeah, check it, what it's worth now. So it did get delivered. I think someone picked up some...
Was it 21 grand?
21 and a half.
21,
The 35,000 Bitcoin.
So those 2 pizzas would currently be worth $752,500,000.
Yes, so the person that had the presence of mind to do a nice thing back then, because I think they were worth 30 cents.
Yeah.
I think a Bitcoin was worth 30 cents back then.
Yeah.
So that was a famous story. Then the Silk Road, which was on the...
Has anyone checked on that dude, by the way?
I think they've interviewed him, and I think he'd spent it on weed or something.
No, I'm not the 35 Bitcoin guy. Not the person who took the Bitcoin for the pizzas.
Oh.
Have they ever, is that bloke still alive, or is he...
No. So I think they did interview him.
His neck in closet.
No, he was super cool about it. He just said, it wasn't a thing back then, and I'm happy to be part of adoption of Bitcoin. And I think that's great. That's super cool.
That's probably the most positive way that you can look at losing $752 million.
For 2 pizzas. Pizzas are delicious.
Oh yeah, worth it.
Then the Silk Road was a website on the dark web, which was a marketplace. It was like Gumtree, I suppose, of nefarious things, and the way people paid for stuff was in Bitcoin. There's a whole story about Ross Ulbricht, who was the creator of it. He's in jail now.
The creator of the Silk Road.
Silk Road. Lots of really interesting podcasts and stuff you can listen to about that. Very interesting. But still, then there was no real mass adoption there. Then it started to go on a bit of a rise, and people started to take note, myself included. Okay, so I heard about it through just reading some blog posts and I was watching it. I was actually going through one of my old phones the other day, and I found I was sending you and Kevin screenshots of what the current price was from $640, I think was the lowest, to I think $1,200. I got in at $6,000 when it was $6,000.
Yeah.
Because it just took me so much time to find an exchange.
That was probably the biggest stumbling block early on, wasn't it? It wasn't really a widespread mainstream thing. So actually being able to find a platform to invest into it was...
To convert money to... Now, the hackers were probably doing it the way it was intended, where it was just peer-to-peer. So they would have said, hey, do you want some cash to buy something? How about you sell? I'll buy some of your Bitcoin off you, and then you can do a direct transaction. That's the beauty of it. The idea is to do it that way and not through an exchange. Now, when I say exchange, this is where I think a lot of people are lost. People don't know how to get it. They don't understand the sort of mechanics of it. But all I would say is, have you been to an airport and seen a Travelex stand?
Right.
Right, have you?
Yeah.
And a Travelex stand, you know that if you've got foreign currency, you walk up to that stand, you give them your foreign currency, they convert it and give you back the currency of your choice. That's an exchange. That's called a currency exchange. There are crypto exchanges which are exactly the same. So it's as simple as that. It's nothing scary. It's as simple as that. Now, when it went on its absolute massive, ridiculous hype was in 2017. And it shot from like 10,000 Aussie dollars. I'm always going to talk Australian dollars. Most Bitcoin people talk in US, but I'll talk in Australian. It went from like $10,000 to $26,000.
You were saying before, and I remember it too, this was back when they used to have the Bitcoin price on like sunrise every day.
Yeah, so in 17 it was so crazy, the rise was so crazy that everyone was talking about it, and it was even listed on the currency thing, like, you know, with gold, oil, like on sunrise, gold, oil, Australian dollar, US dollar, Bitcoin was on there. And then it just dive bombed. Okay, so it's an extremely tumultuous and what's the word I'm looking for? It's a volatile market. Okay, very volatile market. But because it's in the early days, it's like the Wild West. Okay. Now you only lost money if you bought it high and sold it low.
Which is exactly the same as investing in anything.
Correct. Yeah. But if anyone hodled, which is I won't go into that, but if you held on to that Bitcoin, we're back now, baby. You're back. So we're a couple grand away from the absolute worst case scenario if you'd bought at the absolute tippy top of the market. Okay. Now I want to talk, that moves into mass adoption. One of the reasons why it's going off chops now is because people are starting to get it. And when I say people, I mean big investors. In 2017, most Wall Street, large, multi-billion-dollar hedge fund guys, they said it's a scam. Don't touch it. I'll never own it. It's made out of thin air. It's backed by nothing. Don't touch it. Most of them are in it now.
But do you also think that that was a profit securing exercise for them too, because they were invested in things that would be negatively affected by the mass spread adoption of Bitcoin?
Yeah, but there's other ways you can do it. You can go on precious metals, gold, silver. There's other options to do it. The reason why now is they get it. And if I had to sum up Bitcoin as one thing, I would say it's digital gold. You're probably not going to buy stuff with it now, although at Auto Bros you can. I've got the facility. You can purchase a car from me using cryptocurrency.
Fun fact, in the small country town of Winton, where my wife went to for a work function the other day, you can buy pretty much anything there in Bitcoin.
That's awesome. I love it.
Like you can go to the pub and buy a beer in Bitcoin.
That's awesome. Some big players that have just entered, like in the last couple of months. Twitter. So Jack Dorsey, who runs Twitter, he's bought $50 million worth. He's got a company called Square, which does little payment terminals, digital payment terminals. Twitter owns that too. They've done a massive backing in it, and probably the biggest one is PayPal. PayPal now has the facility. No, I haven't had a play with it yet, where you can buy off any vendor using your Bitcoin. So you just go to your platform, you pay just as you usually would with Bitcoin, with PayPal. But when you push pay, it would come out of your Bitcoin account, and it would pay the vendor in cash.
Okay.
Now, do you know what the tricky part is?
Well, that's like you're paying in Bitcoin and they're paying in cash, which means PayPal then holds all the Bitcoin.
they're accumulating a massive amount of Bitcoin.
Oh.
And they're not talking about that, but that's exactly what I said. Yeah.
Wow.
Now, forgetting all...
Just to put that in perspective for people who don't understand what we're talking about. So, we mentioned a few podcasts ago about gold being the gold standard, right? So, back in the day, every single dollar in every major economy in the world is backed by gold. It's how essentially each currency had its value.
When you say backed by gold, what that means is that for every dollar that you had in your hand, at the bank, there was supposed to be a dollar's worth of gold.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, and obviously we spoke about how a lot of people park their investment dollars in gold when things are going through a tumultuous time, like the share market, for example, or because it's a safe harbor of wealth. Because it's going to just sort of sit where it is, and then if, like you were saying to me the other day about how the US has actually printed 24% of the money, 25% of the actual cash that's in circulation in the United States was printed this year alone. So obviously that means the actual value of the American dollar should have devalued by 25%.
Yep.
Which would make things like gold a safe harbor of wealth. So essentially what you're saying PayPal is doing is they are
converting shit money
into Bitcoin.
Digital gold.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, okay. So I'm glad that you picked that up because
Sneaky fuckers.
It's weird that all my articles that I follow, no one's really talking about that. They're talking about the adoption part of it, but I think it's a genius move on their part to accumulate a massive amount of digital gold, which they know is going to be worth everything. Now,
this brings up a whole bunch of other things. But anyway,
the other couple of things that I wanted to talk about Bitcoin for new people. There's only 21 million Bitcoin that are ever going to circulate. Okay, we're at 18.5 million.
How was that number created? Like, who came up with
Satoshi Nakamoto decided that was the number.
Okay.
Now, the other thing, you don't have to buy one whole Bitcoin. You can go, I think it's to the 8th power, like to the 8th decimal. They're called Satoshis, right?
Right.
So you can buy a fraction.
I was about to ask you that. I was like, are they bit cents?
Yeah. It's a fraction of a Bitcoin. Right. So if you don't have to invest 20 grand now. If you don't have 20 grand, you can invest 2 grand, and you'll just buy a portion of a Bitcoin, and you can transact in a portion of a Bitcoin. That's the beauty of it. You can go down to a very finite amount. Even more accurate than a dollar that we have only up to cents, right?
Yeah.
So now the mining thing. Everyone was talking like people don't understand what mining is.
Yeah.
Bitcoin is mined digitally by computers. Okay.
Right.
So these hackers back in the day, they were mining it to accumulate it. There was no exchanges available. You couldn't go and buy it. You had to mine it first. And what that meant was you set your computer to allocate some of its processing power to recording the ledger.
Right.
Okay. So your computer now says so. Jason goes and buys pizza.
So before we get into that bit, explain the blockchain, the theory behind it, how it works. Because the blockchain.
This will fall into it.
Right. Okay.
So I think hackers is a cool term now, right? And they probably were all hackers back then. But I don't want to offend anyone that was a hacker that doesn't see themselves as a hacker, but was on the let's say the early adopters of Bitcoin were mining it. So they'll allocate some of their computer's power to record the transactions. Each hand transaction would have a private key that was recorded. Transaction from this, Now, it was very lucrative in the day, and this is all part of Satoshi's plan. It works the way that it works. The code, the computer code, would say that you would get a reward. Here's a Bitcoin because your computer did this much work.
Right.
But they were getting heaps of Bitcoin out of it to start with. But as more and more transactions happen, and it's starting to be adopted globally, it's put stress on that network. So they need more and more and more and more computing power to process, which means the yield that they're getting out is much less. Yeah,
because divided up amongst much wider.
Back in the day when the Bitcoin was worth like 3 cents, your home computer had enough power to generate 1 Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Now, to get one Bitcoin, you probably need a factory full of state-of-the-art GPU graphics cards running 24 hours a day to generate one Bitcoin.
Which unfortunately stacks the favour in the the massive companies with the massive
like a massive amount of money to throw at it to mine it. Yeah, but I don't think it's as lucrative as what.
Well, probably isn't too, especially if there's a maximum amount of 21 million. We're already at 18 something. Like, why would you throw probably billions of dollars towards creating a computer network that can mine the last? You're probably not going to get a return on investment, are you?
So that's what. So when and I remember when back in the day, I remember seeing Bitcoin miners for sale all the time. But it never really registered to me what it was. I didn't have enough knowledge about it.
Right.
And now you don't see them advertised because you can't do it. You need so much power. The next question that I think people should ask is, what has this done for humanity?
Well, why don't you talk about blockchain first? Because you haven't really explained how blockchain works.
So your computer that is mining Bitcoin now becomes a node of the blockchain. The blockchain being your computer, my computer, computer A, B,
so
C, D.
It's essentially a network.
It's a network.
The blockchain is a network, and each computer is a node on the network.
Yes.
Yeah.
The dark web, or the Tor browser, is based on a blockchain.
Right.
Which means that it's not run by a Google server, an Amazon server. It's not run through any one particular agency. We are creating the power of this chain of computers together.
Yeah.
Okay. That's basically what a blockchain is. What the blockchain is. There are massive benefits to what the blockchain can achieve because every time that a transaction is recorded, it's recorded everywhere on the blockchain.
Yeah, it's sent to every node on the blockchain.
Your node, my node.
Yeah.
So there's no way. So you could hack it.
Yeah.
But if you move something, we can all see it.
Yep.
It is recorded. Okay.
Which I think, this is the bit that I really wanted to talk about, because I think that. So what you were saying before at the beginning of this is the ability to do a peer-to-peer transaction. So obviously, at the moment, if I'm sending you money, I need to tell my bank, send Alex's bank money from my account. And what happens is that money gets sent and doesn't go instantly to you, and it's sent overnight. So what banks do all the time is you will send money, and the reason why it takes longer, it's not because it has to, it's because they actually trade with that money overnight to make as much interest off that money as they possibly can before then passing it on to you.
Yeah.
So the benefit of having a blockchain, for example, is it can be peer-to-peer and it's instant.
It's instant. Yeah. Bitcoin's a bit slow these days,
right?
Because they need more nodes. And there's so many. I would say it's to get real nerdy. I'll just say this and then move on. Because the code, like Satoshi's plan, hasn't been optimized. There are new versions of cryptocurrencies that are far more optimized, that are instant.
Yeah.
That are faster.
But they're not the gold standard.
But it's not the gold standard, and it takes time, but it doesn't take bank time.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the other benefits of that peer-to-peerness and remove the it sounds like penis. Removing the banks and government is when they fuck stuff up.
Yeah.
Okay, which does happen.
Yeah.
Okay, Venezuela, which was spoken before, was a perfect example, and I literally just found an article of a guy thanking a page that he was following in 2015 or 16, which literally has saved his family's livelihood because he moved his pay into Bitcoin when their economy was devaluing by 1,000% every week.
Yeah.
Okay.
But even just to put in perspective for like Australia, because obviously most of the Australians are watching this podcast. If you go back to the global financial crisis, the way that it affected us in Australia was the exact same way that it affected people in the United States. The banks were greedy. They were lending money to people at massive interest rates who couldn't afford to pay it back, but they're lending it to anyone because they were trying to chase profits.
Yep.
And they did that over and over again for a period of years, and then it got to a point where all of a sudden they couldn't sustain the debt level, and then everything just went and exploded. And then what happened? They got bailed out by the Australian government, which means we, as the Australian taxpayer, we paid to bail the banks out when they had fucked the system chasing profits.
Yeah, it's wrong.
That is wrong. And that to me is what the power of the blockchain is.
Absolutely.
Is it removes the ability for these massive, massive companies, because you're seeing the same stuff now. We spoke about the other week about them looking at repealing the responsible lending law changes. And that's to stimulate the economy. Well, the problem is, stimulating the economy shouldn't be based on these massive corporations' profit margins. It shouldn't be based on that. Like, why wouldn't you be able to...
But it is, because our superannuation's in it. Like, our superannuation for what we're going to retire is often invested in those large institutions.
And that's part
of the
problem.
So there's all these external factors.
That's right.
This removes the external factors. This means that we can transact in a way that is peer to peer.
Yeah.
Overseas, how hard is it to send money overseas?
Yeah.
Now, Visa and MasterCard, they've made it easier. But this has all come because of Bitcoin. Osco payments, if you looked at the timing of Osco payments, it would have been the start of 2018.
Yeah.
So after the mass adoption in 2017 of Bitcoin, they went, oh shit, like, we've got the technology to do instantaneous transactions, but we're not going to give it to you.
It's like the whole cleared funds thing. So cleared funds. So when, like, if you would give someone a personal check, for example, the way that a personal check would work is that I receive the personal check from you and I go and cash it at the bank. Now, you have actually got up to 5 business days to cancel that personal check. So, like when we were in the car industry, if we accepted a personal check, you couldn't pick up your car for 5 to 6 days to make sure that money actually cleared first. Now, again, why is that a thing? Because the banks want to play with your money for 5 days. Without actually handing it over, so they can make profits off it. Osco payments, when they were first launched, you could actually go to the bank with a personal check and pay the bank for an advance clearance to speed up the clearance.
$30 or something for a...
That's right. So there was a financial benefit to the bank to speed up the process. Their process that sucks, which is they could easily do it on every single transaction, but there was a financial benefit for them to do that. Osco payments were originally the same thing. You could do a same-day transaction if you paid extra for that same-day transaction. So they've got the ability to do that. But people don't realise they build it around their own profitability.
Inefficiency so that they could profit from not only the result of that inefficiency, but the repair of that inefficiency.
That's right.
So
they created their own.
They created their own income stream.
Yeah.
Okay, so Osco payments came out because of crypto, because of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
In my opinion. In my opinion, the timing is too close.
Yeah.
So that is one thing that you can thank crypto for, without even knowing. You could not believe in it. You could be a massive hater. You can think it's a Ponzi scheme. You can think it's all those things, but it has changed some people's day-to-day life. But what I have noticed is, and I'd like some feedback. I don't think Osco's instant anymore. No, because I know my business payments, and I had another one the other day. It wasn't a full day, but I transacted with her before, and it still took like 6 or 7 hours for her to get it. Now, also, guys that I deal with all the time, they sent me money, and it showed us uncleared funds, digitally uncleared funds, so I couldn't use them for 24 hours.
Yeah,
like this is
it's just absolute bullshit. This is the biggest thing that gets me about internet banking. Why the fuck? It's 2020. Why the fuck does the internet banking get the weekend off?
Yeah.
So if you send money on a Friday before 5 o'clock, if I send it to you, you won't receive that money until Monday.
And I'll give you the tip: at the bank, there's not a teller there going,
no.
Oh, Jason.
Yeah, that's right. Like,
send.
Oh, yeah, it's 5 o'clock. I'm going home now, so I'm not going to tick off on those transactions.
So peer-to-peer blockchain never sleeps. One of the if you wanted to be a proper investor, one of the beauties of the exchange markets as opposed to stock exchange, like and not just crypto, but what's the currency exchange? They're 24/7. Yeah. They run all the time. Okay, so there's a real opportunity there because our time zone sucks, right?
Yeah.
But the future is going to be on the blockchain. I'm not saying we're not going to be transacting in Bitcoin. I'll give you the tip. I'll tell you that right now. But it is going to be the safest harbor of money, or wealth, sometimes. Okay, when shit is getting real, people will move to those facilities.
Well, didn't like $50 billion or something just move into crypto recently?
No, that is no, 50 million at a time. There was like 3 or 4 big investors that went and have bought 50 million at a time. At the moment, this is the first time in Bitcoin's history that more people are buying than Bitcoin is being created.
Right.
So there's a massive supply, well, there's about to be a supply shortage, which is pushing...
Which is why the price is going up.
Yeah. The price up. But I want people to be aware of it, because you're all going to be kicking yourself if you listen to this episode and didn't do anything about it.
But
don't buy it. Understand it and appreciate it.
Yeah. So this is the advice that I'm going to give right now is, so prior to a few weeks ago, I wasn't a big investor guy, right? And I believe in practicing what we preach. So obviously we had that conversation about investing in shares and stuff like that. So instead of just diving straight into it, because we've spoken about before, a lot of people just go, just start. No, don't just start. Do your research first.
Yeah, that's.
I went and dove into research on the subject. I found myself an investment strategy, and now I've created a strategy and I'm sticking to it.
Yep.
So when it comes to cryptocurrencies, blockchain, Bitcoin, if you don't know anything about it, dive into some research about it. Ask questions. Alex has obviously been fairly heavily into this for 4 years now, since 2016.
Yep.
Throw some questions at him, throw them in the comments. If there's anything that you want to know that you're not too sure about, just throw them at him, because dive into the research. Because at the end of the day, any...
knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power, 100%. And when it comes to investment portfolios, they always say diversify. So
yeah, make it part of your investment strategy.
That's right. Don't throw all your eggs in one basket. But diversify your portfolio.
I do want to talk quickly about when you start mentioning Bitcoin, your network will tend to say it's evil because it's used to buy drugs and prostitutes.
I was going to say that because when you're talking about Silk Road before, like all of the news stories that I remember hearing about the blockchain early on was all based around, it's just used to buy drugs and
to be
organs
fair,
and children.
That's where it was definitely being transacted because that was the only place to transact at the time. Okay.
There's a lot of like pedophilia references to it too.
Yeah, but I think that. But what else have they bought children with or drugs with? Cash.
Yeah.
Now, so the banks are trying to get rid of cash. That's why. So me as a business, if I can't accept more than $10,000 cash without filling out a form from the guy saying that he's not a terrorist or a money launderer, yet our banks can go and actually launder that money and get these little tap on the wrist fines, right? So
I think Westpac, was it Westpac?
They've all been done, but Westpac's the most recent one.
Most recent, it was like $25 million fines or something like that for money laundering.
Banks sending, harbouring money for Mexican drug cartels.
Yeah.
So when someone wants to lecture you about it, your bank's doing it too, mate.
Yeah.
100%. Your bank is doing it too.
Yeah.
So before you start going and ragging on about it, just know that whatever you're transacting with right now is being used for nefarious activities.
The other thing too that you need to keep in mind is Reserve Banks just dropped interest rates again. So we are at 0.1%.
Lowest in Australian history.
Lowest in Australian history. And there is a chance that it gets lower and we go into negative interest rates. Now, when we go into negative interest rates, every single person is going to need to completely rethink how they look at parking their money.
So I'm not a financial advisor. This is general advice. And go and talk to someone that actually knows what they're doing. But if you're sitting on a big lump of cash, you got rocks in your head.
Yeah.
It's dangerous. It is dangerous.
Yeah. Because just so if you guys understand, when banks go into negative interest rates, it means that for all the money that you've got in a savings account, they will actually pull money off you as part of the interest because it's negative interest. So your cash becomes a depreciating asset in that. Now, most obviously savings accounts we know don't pay you dick at the moment anyway. And what's interesting is that the gap between the official cash rate, the interest rate that banks give you on a savings account, but also the interest rate they're still charging on mortgages, the actual profitability gap is widening for banks.
Yeah, they will.
Because, I mean, how many times have we seen it this year? Interest rate lowers, what do the banks drop? Fixed interest rates. Now, they are doing that to look like they are passing on the rate reductions. But what people don't look into closely enough, they're only passing on the rate reductions to new fixed interest rate loans. So I've got a variable rate mortgage. There's been 2 straight interest rate cuts that have not been passed on to me. It's a variable interest rate. It's supposed to vary. You get it knowing full well it's supposed to go up and down with the Reserve Bank.
I put that on CommBank's Twitter page. I'm like, interesting. Fixed equals variable. Variable equals fixed.
It's insane, isn't it? It's insane. And again, it's like you got to understand I'm very excited. Now, look, I'm a naturally cautious guy. I don't just dive into investments. I don't just dive into crypto. I want to do my research.
You want to understand it.
I want to understand it before I do something. But something I do understand, and we've spoken about this many times, even just now, all the banks care about is their own profits. That's all they care about.
For the shareholders.
The shareholders
which is too.
Yeah, 100%. And everyone's greedy. And this is one of the problems with a capitalist society is that every single business is based on infinite growth. Right? So the problem is we all need to really think about where we park our money, how we use our money, and how we allow ourselves to be controlled by these institutions who control our money. Because money is the currency of our society, and for now, and we allow these small amounts of highly profitable institutions to control it. The fact that the Reserve Bank of Australia can lower the interest rate that they give money to the big banks, and they aren't forced to pass that on to their customers is insane to me. 100%. It's absolute insanity.
There's corruption built into
100%.
the system.
The Reserve Bank drops the cash rate, and all that happens is the bank's profitability goes up. That is insane.
Now, I will tell you, there is probably the only way that Bitcoin can be corrupted is whales buying. Now, what's a whale purchase?
PayPal converting Bitcoin to cash.
Well, a whale purchase would be someone going and saying, look, I'm going to buy $50 million tomorrow with Bitcoin, and the price, because the volume on the chart goes up, and then any investor looks at it and goes, oh, something's happening, so get on, and it pumps it up, and then they sell it. So that's called pump and dump. Now, all investors...
Is that a pump and dump?
That's called pump and dump.
Is it?
That's called pump and dump. Does that count for the drink?
No, I was just going to say the pump and dump is something that we've all done before, right?
A pump and dump is a real thing, and
it
happens on the share market too. But that's probably the only really, and that's the minimum version of corruption, right? But where you can't corrupt
it's market manipulation.
You can't corrupt the blockchain because it's trustless. You'll see this word, if you start to research, you'll see the word trustless. And if you're anything like me, I thought that is a bad thing. I'm like, trustless. Trustless means it's written in the code that this thing is definitely happening. It means you don't need to trust anyone because the code itself will do it for you.
One of the things that I want to, because anyone who's sitting there going, hey, Alex and Jason, shut up. Like, you guys are just, conspiracy theorists and, this is rubbish. It's safe to park my money in the bank. One thing I want to remind people, go back to the global financial crisis and Greece. When the global financial crisis hit really, really hard, in Greece, people were going to ATMs to try to withdraw all their cash in their account because they were losing it at a rapidly increasing rate. They ran out of cash. You actually couldn't withdraw all of your money.
They stopped the ATMs.
So you could work your entire life and amass this nest egg that you think you're going to be able to rely on for retirement, guess what? You don't control that.
Yeah, control
You don't control that. The banks control that.
Yeah.
So at any time, they could just go, no, you can't have that.
Yep. And
as unlikely as that sounds like it would happen, it already happened.
Yeah. Oh, there are countless times. Well, look at if you don't think that they could just change the dollar that we use, what's a euro?
Yeah, 100%.
What is a euro?
The euro was an attempt at doing what Bitcoin does.
Yeah.
It was an attempt at having one currency for a whole bunch of different nations.
But they also amalgamated a bunch of smaller economies into one large one to try and snuff out the bad ones.
Yeah, that's right.
And the big ones had to pay for it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So if you think that these things can't happen, if you think we're speaking in a too grandiose way, this shit happens in our lifetime.
It's happening. Yeah, it has been happening already. Like, you actually need to open your eyes to the fact that these things can happen and will happen again.
Yeah, start to keep an eye on markets. Yep. Start to do some research. Research is the key. Research. Yep. Like I said, it took me, I don't know how long I was researching prior, but it would be a solid 12 to 18 months before I really dipped my toe in it when I first got in it. Mm-hmm. And I'm balls deep now. I'm probably, without the smarts of being able to actually do
Are you balls deep into your pump and dump?
The coding. I've not got the maths. I've not got the maths to do a pump and dump. Hit me with your questions. I really want to see some more people in it. Don't do it. Don't buy it.
Yeah.
And this is definitely not. Actually, let me just do a big buyer beware. Mm-hmm. What always happens is scammers come out. When anything's hot, scammers come out. There was another thing they said.
I got a scam phone call the other day, actually.
What was your scam phone call?
My scam phone call was an automated message with an Australian accent. Mm. And
that's a good one then.
Yeah. And they were saying that because of my tax debt, my tax file number has been frozen, and I needed to call them straight away to pay off my tax debt. Didn't tell me what it was. To pay off my tax debt before I'm arrested.
I got one with you when I was at Aldi buying Gucci the other day.
Yeah.
Is this Mr. Vaughn?
Yeah.
I said, yes. I'm from your telecommunication company. You have a big outstanding debt. Okay. Which telecommunication company? Telstra. Was that a guess? You have a big debt. Well, that's funny.
Yeah.
Because I don't have an account with Telstra.
And do you
know what? I do. And I'm in $24 credit. They owe me money. I should bring that guy back.
Call them back. But that's an interesting thing, because now that I really think about it, ever since I've jumped out of the motor trade, so my phone used to run hot all day, every day, because that's what happens in sales, right? You're just constantly getting phone calls from staff, customers, whatever. The amount of scam phone calls I've received in the last 2 months has drastically increased.
Yeah, there's
so ramping it up.
So what I want to say is, you'll get lots and lots of crypto ones, and don't let this be a catalyst for you to go and do something stupid, okay?
Yeah.
So, I probably still get a call once a month from a friend that is trying to get me on board to this crypto thing, right? Because they see me talking about crypto. It's always a Ponzi.
Oh, yeah.
And the one question you have to ask is, what does this thing produce? What product does this produce? Or what function does this, or what does this commodity do? And if the only thing it does is makes you money while you sign people on, you are in a Ponzi scheme.
That's right.
They are illegal.
Yeah.
It is still illegal if it's in crypto. I've had someone say, oh, it's not illegal because it's crypto.
Yeah.
It's still illegal, but worse than that, why would you do that to a friend?
Yeah, I know.
You should not profit. Now, anyone that doesn't know what a Ponzi scheme is, a Ponzi scheme is when a person at the top says, hey, everyone give me $100 and I'll give you $50 back, and then every time you get 100, I'll give you another 50. And
then when you sign people up beneath you, they'll give you the 100, you only give the 50, and then for every person that they sign up underneath, you get $25.
All it is a great way to lift money off your friends, off your friend network.
And it is a great way to socially isolate yourself from your friends too.
Yeah, but But crypto, I think it happens more so in crypto because people don't understand it, because it sounds legitimate.
And they think the rules are different.
They think the rules are different. That's a really good point. So, now, if there are...
really good point. That classes is a great example. So have a drink, kids. we haven't said algo and stuff.
I could have
used it. Thirsty.
I wanted to use the word before and I changed it. I'm vigilant of that.
Why denying the viewers a drink?
Yeah, true.
They've all got cotton mouth.
Yeah. So, how long have we gone for now? What are we up?
Doesn't matter. Just keep riffing.
Because we've just come through the US election.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Everyone is talking about election. Sorry, not everyone. Half the population is talking about
electoral
potentially
fraud.
some untoward stuff to do with voting.
Yeah.
Okay. One of probably the best case scenarios, the best use functions for mankind for the blockchain is elections.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because it's trustless, irrefutable, unhackable, and precise way of collating data. So if the US election was on the blockchain, there would be no manipulation of the vote counting themselves.
Yeah,
it could be manipulation of what's input.
That's right. Yeah, but that's the only way that you could actually manipulate.
But the count would be irrefutable. Okay, so that is one example. Another example is home ownership. So if you've bought a home, what does a conveyancer do? A conveyancer, you pay to go and get your records out of council.
Yeah.
Right? At a cost. Why?
Yeah.
That's mine.
Yeah.
It's a document. It should be stored. Now, it's sensitive information. But
if it's encrypted on the blockchain, that's fine. That's where all sensitive information should be.
And if you can prove that asset is yours,
yeah,
right, then you should have access to it. Now, in underdeveloped countries, land ownership is a contentious point.
Yeah.
Because governments will just come in, new regimes will come in and say, "Oh, we're taking it all."
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so this is just that there's so much such a powerful thing. Blockchain will be the basis of Internet 2.0, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I think Internet 2.0 will be peer-to-peer. Let's remove the fat cats. Let's remove the banks, the governments out of what our internet looks like and what our monetary policy looks like. Do your research.
The biggest, one of the points that I want to bring to everyone's attention and just focus on a little bit is if you and I performing a transaction, so if I'm buying a vehicle from Auto Bros, if I bring in a third party to that transaction, the third party never does that for free. The third party has their income that they need to earn out of that transaction, and where does that come from? It either comes from increased cost to me or increased cost to you.
Yep.
So all the blockchain is attempting to do is to remove the third party from each transaction.
Yep.
Because that's
why is there a third party?
Why is there a third party? Like it's 2020. Why are we putting a third party into all these different transactions?
A cash transaction is one of the few ways that you can do an instantaneous transaction. And for me, in my business, I need that.
That's
right. If I'm buying a car, if you've come in and you want to sell me your car, the only way that I can secure the vehicle, I can have the vehicle now, and you can have your funds now, is with cash purchase. But governments have put laws around that I can't. If it's under 10 grand, it's fine. It's easy.
Yeah.
If I go to the ATMs, let's say I had two transactions, one at $9,000 and one at $5,000, and I can't even put that money in the ATM machine.
I know, and that's so.
But is that an irregular transaction when I'm dealing with cars?
It's not.
Most of my cars are over $10,000.
And so this is something that, all right, let's get a little bit conspiracy theory.
Let's do it.
Right, let's do it. Let's go into it.
Let's go.
One of the things in sales, we talk about this all the time, it's seed planting. When it comes to the way we live, I'm going to call it drip feeding. What is drip feeding? Slowly dripping in little bits which are palatable, which you can handle, to over a period of time change behaviours. So cashless society is one of the things that has been drip fed into us for the last, probably since crypto really started becoming a big thing.
Yep.
Cashless society. Now, a lot of people go, people who spend everything in cash is because they don't want to pay tax and they should just pay their fair share of tax and blah, blah, blah. Now, to a degree, that is correct. But on the other hand of it, major corporations use tax dodgers all the time to not pay a cent of tax and just increase their...
But what I want to say to that is change the way the tax system works, not the cash system.
Yeah, that's right.
If you're worried about tax collection, fix the tax collection mechanism.
Yeah.
Don't change the way that you and I transact with each other.
That's right. So, like, just to throw it out there for you, this is the way the big corporations work. They make bucket load of profits, and what they do is they take a lot of that money and they'll buy new real estate, and they might buy an apartment building that's worth $100 million. And then what they'll do is they'll go, at the end of the tax year, they'll go and get someone to revalue that asset at $80 million. So all of a sudden, they've paid $100 million for it, they've valued it at $80 million, so they've made a $20 million loss on that investment, which they then pull out of their taxable income.
Which you'll see written as a write-down.
Which is a write-down, which is the way that people with large sums of wealth can continue to increase that wealth because they're buying more and more assets which do appreciate in value, and they're using those assets to pay less tax, to write the amount of tax off, which then allows them to pump it back in again.
Now, that is a case where the law has not, the legislation needs to change to stop that.
That's right.
Activity.
Yeah.
Okay?
Look at,
but don't change the function at which we transact.
That's right.
To facilitate that.
And that's the whole thing. So, because again, going to a cashless society negatively affects the lowest class more than affects the highest class.
Absolutely.
Right? So again, so drip feeding. I think COVID and the way that we've been forced to transact during COVID has been a step towards drip feeding towards a cashless society. Everything is pay wave now. Got to pay wave everything. Pay wave, pay wave, pay wave.
Do you know who has got a cashless society at the moment?
Who?
China.
Right.
But China's is different. China's is not bank run, it's app run. So they've got Alipay, WeChat or Weibo.
But their society is completely different too, because they don't have private banks. They're government. The government runs
same as the apps. State.
Yeah.
You can't have a company there, it's going to be state-owned.
That's right.
But there's an example of where you could end up if you aren't trying to liberate private transactions. And that's what I wanted to say as well. Why is it anyone's business but me and the vendor what I purchase? That data alone is super valuable, but it's private.
Yeah.
I'm a citizen. Why can't I buy this pot plant off you?
Yeah.
But no, I need to
mark
it in a note on a recipient and put a receipt next to it.
But again, so this is part of drip feeding, right? So the way that all this stuff really came up was counter-terrorism financing, or CTF they call it in finance terms. So when I was doing finance, we have to do all these modules on counter-terrorism. And the whole $10,000 cash transaction limit, was brought in as a counter-terrorism measure during the early 2000s because of the World Trade Center and all that sort of stuff. Now, let me ask you this. So you need to fill out a form when someone pays you more than $10,000 in cash.
Yep.
And that's supposed to be sent to AUSTRAC. I think they may have changed the name for it, but AUSTRAC, which is a government-run organisation which looks at large cash transactions. Now, if you're terrorism funding, if your bank account showed constant transactions between cash that you are receiving being sent to Afghanistan or being sent to Iraq or wherever, that might raise a few red flags. But the problem was, so they brought in counter-terrorism laws, but then the banks were still sending the money as long as it was underneath that transaction amount. But again, it was...
Or in some cases, it was over that amount and they did it 50,000 times unlawfully.
Yeah, and then got a little slap on the wrist.
Got a fine equivalent to a month's income.
Yep. And you see this a lot where...
Yet that is affected, yet I'm not allowed to transact in that
Exactly.
way.
And guess
All
what?
of us are not
And guess what? Every single person knows that's a thing. Every single person goes, I can't pay for something that's over $10,000 in cash. Why is that okay?
Yeah.
Because it got drip fed into us and now it's just part of our society. Yeah. And like I do, honestly, I worry about some stuff like COVID, for example. COVID has completely changed the way that we interact and we do business. And a lot of these things they have drip fed into us during COVID, I don't think are going to go away. Like you go to restaurants, for example, everything is just ordering on an app. Like you got to go on your phone, you got to sign in now because they don't want to actually do table service anymore. So like that is a small thing which has now become widely accepted.
That's one I don't mind.
It's just less human interaction.
But humans suck.
Yeah.
If we're going to talk about, I am a pro automation of all things. I think I've said it on the podcast before. When I'm Prime Minister of Australia, I'm going to be the first person running for office saying, less jobs for Aussies, because I don't want us to have to do shitty jobs when you can automate all the shitty stuff.
And that's a whole thing too. Like, just to throw it out there, don't like they took our jobs over this. The theory behind it is if you could automate everything and like, let's say that I'm a business, right? And I pay you $20 an hour. And out of that $20 an hour, you're getting taxed at, call it 40%. So that's $8 per hour is what you're getting taxed at. What you could do is I could automate your position and only pay the tax amount to the government. So I get it cheaper. I save $12 an hour on you because you're a machine now.
Yep.
But I'm still paying my $8 per hour in tax,
yep.
which means the government still gets the same amount of tax revenue from it.
Yep.
I save money, which means I can spend more money in the economy,
yep.
which then stimulates the economy more and more and more. And then, but you still got the tax revenue there because at the end of the day, we need to pay taxes because we need to pay for medical, like all the services, right? State schooling and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
So that's the theory behind it. We should automate more of the shit work, still get the tax income for it, because then it probably opens...
We should automate all of it. Automate all of it.
Yeah.
Everything. Automate everything.
Yeah.
Now, it's going to be 100 years away. Idiocracy kind of talks about it, which is why we need to watch it. But I'm with you. I'm definitely aware of some of these things, and I think that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is an extremely powerful tool to hedge against any of those future changes.
Which is why you will notice a lot of like government officials and stuff like that. They never talk about the benefits of Bitcoin because it's away from their system.
It's away from their system.
Yeah.
But ask yourself this: next time you're buying something, why does this vendor need all this information? And then I'm not just telling my vendor. Why do I have to tell my bank?
Well, see, that's something else too, which I think should be on the blockchain as well. Again, for years I've done Privacy Act stuff when it comes to finance. So if you're running a business, for example, and if a government auditor comes in and finds people's personal information just out for display, that is a breach of the Privacy Act. You can get fined for that. So we are now in a situation where every single establishment you go to has a piece of paper on it that you need to write all of your personal data on it. Stuff that you would never have given away.
Yep.
Never have given away in a million years. You have to write all your personal data down and just give it to random person, which, like, the problem is 99% of people out there are good, but 1% of the population is going to use that for nefarious acts. And those nefarious acts could be identity fraud. They could just be as simple as you've got a creepy dude at a cafe and an attractive female comes in.
I never even thought of that.
Right?
Ugh, yeah.
Right? An attractive female comes in and all of a sudden he's got her name, phone number and address. Sends her a text. I served you today at X cafe.
Or just rolls up at the house.
Stalks her on social media. Like, we are now in a situation where they drip fed in, where we all just accept if I go somewhere, I need to hand over all my personal data. That is dangerous.
Yeah.
And when does that go away?
Yeah.
Because we're talking about COVID, and like I saw a news article yesterday about COVID vaccine's got a 90% success rate at the moment. Then you're also hearing shit about in Europe, they're doing a mink cull because there's a new strain of COVID which is jumping from minks to human beings. So when this COVID-19 vaccine comes out, is there going to be one? Does it cover the mink as well?
Yeah.
And that's a whole thing. Like flu vaccine, I spoke about a couple of weeks ago. It's the first you've ever gotten the flu vaccine. And I'm not saying I got sick because of the flu vaccine, But why is there a flu vaccine every year? Because the strain of the flu changes year to year. So we're putting all this money and development into a COVID vaccine at the moment, and which in 12 months' time there's just going to be a new strain that this one doesn't cover. Now, I want to say this because again, this is all conspiracy theory shit, and people might be turning off right now. But I want to say this: who benefits from it? The companies that create the tests and that create the vaccines.
Yep. And
the problem is, as a government, so if I'm ScoMo, right? I'm not a doctor. I don't know anything about viruses or vaccines or anything like that. All I can rely on is the medical advice that I'm receiving, but we're also in this like sue first society where if you say the wrong thing, like you're saying at the beginning of this, don't buy Bitcoin because you don't want to be held responsible for when people buy Bitcoin and lose their money.
Yeah.
So ScoMo has to go, I've got to err on the side of caution. So we should be vaccinated because that's the advice that I'm receiving from the medical community. Now the problem is, who's the medical community receiving their advice from? Like, this is one of the drip feeding things that I want to talk about is in Ireland, they're doing a COVID passport now.
Yes.
So it's a COVID passport, right? So what happens is this, at the moment for you to go to work, you have to get an app on your phone. Now that app, you go and get a COVID test, they automatically upload your test results to the app, right? So they don't just give them to you, it gets uploaded to your app and you get a green light or a red light. So you got either free of COVID or you got COVID. Now, if you've got COVID, you need to obviously quarantine for 2 weeks and all that sort of stuff. Now, obviously those tests, you might not have COVID today, but you might get it tomorrow. So it will give you an automatic reminder and change your status to amber when you need to go and get a new COVID test. Now, the company that creates the COVID tests also created the app. Now, they say that to go to work at the moment. Oh yeah, obviously great business.
It's like me being able to make cars break down and then me being the only supplier of cars.
100%.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is...
Or creating legislation that says that this car is now unlawful. You need a new car.
That's right. So, and this is what I talk about, drip feeding. So we are in a situation in Australia at the moment. We have no COVID tracer app or anything like that. Oh, sorry, no. We do have COVID safe.
It just doesn't work if you use an iPhone or if it's in a wall. Like if it's
that's right. And you know what?
If your Bluetooth turns off.
Do you know why it doesn't work? Because it was created by our government, who sucks at tech. So what's going to happen? There will be a private company, a tech company in Australia, who will come to the government and go, hey, we've solved all your problems with the COVID tracer app. This is a way better app. You should tell all the people they need to have this app. And at the moment, so the whole COVID passport thing in Ireland, what if I want to go and visit Ireland? It'll get to a point there where they won't allow people to come into the country unless you've got the app, unless you've had a test, unless it's all uploaded. Next thing you know, once it's widely accepted, because they drip feed this stuff in, when it becomes widely accepted, they start using it for more and more functions. So in Australia, we might not have a single case of COVID, but we might be in a point where we need to get tests every 2 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever it is, and that you need to have or it might be, like I think there's certain childcare centres, this is pre-COVID, where they've got things like no vaccine, no play, or you can't go unless you're vaccinated.
Yep.
Are we going to be doing that with COVID as well?
Yeah.
You know, is it going to be
this strain of COVID, you mean?
Yeah, you can't go interstate, you can't go overseas unless you've had the vaccine for this strain of COVID. And then the problem is everyone will get the vaccines, and then COVID 2021 or 21 will come out.
Yeah.
And it'll be a new strain.
Does it make us a libertarian? Is that the word libertarian where we're thinking like there should be a lot of more onus on the individual because we are human beings. We have an intelligence.
Well,
and I think that we can operate in a smart way, ungoverned to a point.
I think that so I did 10 years in sales, and the problem with doing sales is it gives you a cynical view of the world because I was constantly trying to sell something. I was trying to sell a product. So I understand when I'm being sold to, right? And at the end of the day, we are being sold to at the moment. Now, I threw this question up yesterday. So COVID's got like a 1% death rate. Right, so from people who get it to people who actually die from it. Now, the majority of the people who die from COVID are elderly.
Yep.
Right, so... Or pre-existing. But let's talk about the elderly for a second. So if the elderly are the ones who primarily die from COVID, are the elderly going to get the vaccine? I don't know if you would. Like, if you're being injected with, like, how many elderly people are going to get vaccinated for anything anymore? Like, obviously, we've got other pre-existing vaccinations we've been doing for years.
Do you know the stat that I want to know, and I don't think you'll ever be able to find the data? I want to know what the suicide rate was under lockdown. What the difference between pre-lockdown and during lockdown.
And it won't be spoken about because I think it's huge.
If I had to speculate, I'd say mental health went up, because I know that calls to mental health services went through the roof, which is a good thing.
Yep.
Because I do believe you use those, like utilize those
100%.
those things. But and it's going to sound massively controversial. If that figure is higher than the death of COVID, do we need to ask more questions?
I absolutely think we do. And the thing is that, like, look,
do you know what is hard to profit out? You can't vaccinate for suicide.
For suicide. No, you can't.
And is it the second highest? Heart in Australia, it's heart disease is number one.
I think
suicide's
like for
two.
people below the age of 35, the highest cause of death is suicide, and it's just going to get worse. And that's something that, like, that you, again, I don't believe.
We know we're talking about a sensitive.
Yeah, and like I said, and look, obviously, if anyone out there has had a family member die from COVID, my heart's with you. Like, because I'm not saying it doesn't kill anyone, but what I am saying is that we are changing the way that we live in a society around a disease that's got a 1% death rate in a country that during COVID was still allowing the sale of alcohol and cigarettes.
Yeah.
Like, let's be real, right? Like, we are saying you can't go over the border to visit, like, you can't go over the border to go to a fucking funeral from your family member that's died of something not COVID related, but we can still sell you cigarettes.
Yeah.
Like, how are we actually trying to create better lives for people?
Yeah, the question's going to be asked is, what is the motivation? Is the motivation really to protect people, or is it to protect some other interest as opposed to...
Which I believe, with a lot of this drip feeding stuff, is to protect another interest. Like, we are easier to control by governments or whoever, might not be the government, but the government gets their advice from somewhere. We are easier to control with the more of our freedoms we give up. And at the moment, due to COVID, we are being forced to give up freedoms. Can't freely travel. Have to leave your personal details.
When was the last example of this? It's very recent.
Tell me.
Terrorism.
Yeah.
9/11.
Yep.
Now, think about how life has changed. So
and think about how much of that stuff has been repealed.
None of it. So
and that's the problem. I drip feed it in when there's a call to action.
Yeah, a fear-based
call to action. We drip feed it in, and we never pull this stuff back.
Yeah.
So I remember, the company that I worked for, when the COVID Safe app came out, they couldn't tell us to do it, but they were strongly suggesting that we downloaded this app. And I refused. And I actually had a bit of a Barney with my manager over at the time, because I just said, number one, I don't believe that the government has ever shown competency in the tech space before. Like the medical passport thing a few years ago is a perfect example of that. Have a drink. Where they were like, oh, we want this centralized medical database, so you could be in any state or whatever and they could access your medical data. Guess what? Got hacked in like 5 minutes, and all the people's sensitive medical data was just thrown out on the internet.
Yeah.
So they've never shown competency in that. But again, it's been drip fed. Drip feed, drip feed, drip feed. And this is the thing that you guys, you need to focus on, is they use fear to get an in on a small thing. And then that small thing starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And that might not be because Scott Morrison has got nefarious plans or anything like that. But again, he doesn't want to be Trump. He doesn't want to be the guy who tried to push back against the COVID thing, who is now being accused of being responsible for all these Americans dying of COVID, which again is up to debate on how many actually were COVID deaths compared to dying of other causes, but hospitals recording it as COVID because they were getting paid more money when it was a COVID death. No one wanted to be Trump, right? So ScoMo doesn't want to be Trump. So he's always going to err on the side of the caution. And by Erring on the side of caution means he's forced to take all the advice from the medical community, which is given to him, which he doesn't understand, because none of us do, unless we've got degrees in this stuff. None of us understand how this stuff works. He has to spout it out there, and he's got to do the things. And again, it's erring on the side of caution is what's safety. I'm just going to remove your ability to move freely, to keep you safe.
Yeah.
Can't go interstate to keep you safe. Can't walk over an arbitrary line on a map to keep you safe.
V for Vendetta. Watching the movie V for Vendetta.
Maybe we should review that the week after.
I just watched it recently, but and I think again we talk about practical things. So I think we've spoken some very big and broad subjects.
Mm-hmm.
The practical thing I think you can do is look after yourself first.
100%. Be healthy.
Be healthy.
That's not spoken about by the government hasn't come out and gone, cut back your alcohol, cut back your cigarettes, exercise, eat a healthy diet.
Remove processed food.
They haven't said any of that shit. They didn't shut any of that stuff down during this.
Yeah.
That is the number one cause of death is pre-existing health conditions.
Yeah.
Just be healthier. But no one speaks about that.
Yeah.
It's controlled movements, and you have to hand over all your personal data all the time. I don't agree.
Yeah. So look after yourself, but question these things in the sphere of your life. So don't be burdened by
question us too.
Yeah. But what I want to say is don't let us burden you with this. All I want you to do is think about how these things affect you or your family. Okay. And then, when it comes to a point where you are at a crossroads to make a choice, I just want you to make an educated choice, factoring in things that you may not have factored in before.
Yep.
I think that's
for sure. And that's the thing. As Andrew Schultz would call it, a lot of the stuff is feelings, no facts. So I don't have a lot of factual evidence to back up some of these things that I'm saying. I'm a numbers guy. I'm a gambler. I look at trends, and I look at behaviours and. Past behaviours are usually a pretty good predictor of future behaviours. And again, if you look at the terrorism stuff, like you're saying, the societal changes since then, you can't leave a bag unattended in an airport terminal anymore because they might have a bomb in it.
I remember I was talking to Tasha the other day. Remember when we used to fly to New Zealand and they would let us in the cockpit? Yeah. You could see at the front of the cockpit.
Yep.
So now it's sealed shut.
Yeah. And again, that's for safety and that's fair enough. But it's also where do you draw the line? So if you go to America, you still need to take your shoes off, take everything off to go through the airport checkouts and stuff like that. That's never gone away. So
you need to line up, because this is what happened to me at LAX.
Yeah.
Had to line up to go through that machine that blows the wind on you to see if you've come into contact with any explosives.
Yeah, and this is the interesting thing too, is it's
and they had two machines there at LAX.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah. But they do it for safety, right? And the whole thing is you go, when was the last terrorist attack in America? I can't remember it, right? I don't know when the last terrorist attack was in America.
Boston Marathon?
Yep, okay, let's say that. So, and which was, I think, was it someone already in the States as well.
Yeah.
So the problem is, they can justify continuing those programs because there's been no terrorist attack. However, who's to say that if you took some of those measures away, that there would be no terrorist attack?
Yeah.
But that's just set in stone now.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too. I don't want to be in a situation 10 years from now where every single place I go I have to leave my personal data.
No,
we talk about data security all the fucking time.
Not even security. Okay, so you've actually said two things. You leave your details everywhere you go, and now you get more phone calls from scammers and...
Yeah. Is that a coincidence? I don't think it is. Because,
there's more instances of your...
100%. If you're, I'm sure that some of these scammers have a day job.
Yeah.
And what if they're just working at a cafe? That's my phone list now, because I put out a piece of paper every single day. It gets 10 names written on it with phone numbers and addresses. Cool. Those are that's my homework for tonight. I'm going to go and put them in my automated message system.
Also always ask the question when someone's asking you to do something, and it's usually, I'm saying at an official standpoint, what is their real motivation?
That's right.
What potential motivations could they have? Because if you don't ask those questions, we could get to a situation where society looks very stark compared to what it should or could potentially look like.
This actually brings up. So we talked about the election last week, and I think the popular consensus is that when you look at Trump and you look at Biden, that Trump is a disgusting, misogynistic, narcissistic, racist guy, right? Who's talking about grabbing girls by the pussy and all that sort of thing, and that Biden carries himself presidentially.
I'll fix it up. I wrote this down yesterday.
Okay.
The technique that he did, how to manipulate the media, say nothing.
Yeah.
Say nothing. That's what that campaign did nothing.
Yeah.
He didn't speak about anything.
Yeah.
Just let the media do their thing on the guy that's yelling and shouting.
And especially when the media actively suppress some stories about Biden's family. So let me ask you this. So people know who Trump is because he's never tried to hide it.
Yep.
Right? Now, they voted him in for a reason in 2016 because he was, again, I think...
Anti-establishment.
Anti-establishment. I think a lot of people are awake to the fact now that the establishment doesn't necessarily have their best interests at heart.
Yep.
Right? And that's why they voted Trump in with a landslide. Now, this is a question I posed the other day because I don't love Trump. I don't like him as a person. What I do like about him is he had his own money and wasn't able to be bought. And a lot of his behaviours have indicated that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm sure he's made some laws in the US which advance his commercial interests. Some of the tax cuts to big business and stuff like that would have directly
helped real estate holdings and things like
100%.
that.
100%. So that he would have made those changes which made more money for him. Okay, that negative. That's a bad thing.
But it's not because the economy was stronger than it ever was, even though only 50% of the US are invested in that market. But
yeah.
But a more affluent country tends to be a more a better society.
That's right. But so this is the question I threw up there. Would you rather, they often say it's better the devil you know than the devil you don't. So you know who Trump is. Trump's a businessman. He's a very good salesperson, TV celebrity, right? He's a popular guy.
Yeah.
And you look at someone like Biden, and again, the salesperson cynic in me goes, he's just a salesperson. So with a lot of the stories that came out about so Biden's son, when he was the vice president to Obama, Biden's son, who's got no experience in energy, managed to get a job on the board of the Ukraine Energy Board. And he was getting paid like $80,000 a month or $120,000 a month or something like that. And this is while Biden was the vice president, but he was also the minister for the affairs for the Ukraine. So do not tell me for a second that is a nepotism of using your name and your potential. And again, you could potentially be compromised in that way, right? So do not tell me for a second that Biden's son got that job of his own accord. Now, I'm not saying Biden's doing back-end deals and whatever, right? I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is this. Is it better to have someone like Trump who is outwardly, I think, over-honest is probably his issue because he says shit that he's thinking, that he's got no filter, and that's why all his tweets and stuff like that come out and he actually says what he thinks. Is it better to have that guy or a guy who, he's a salesperson, puts a suit on, holds himself really well.
Politician.
He's a career politician who he looks outwardly like he's doing the right thing to potentially cover up some things.
I have a bit of a thought that I'm trying to develop in my mind about what I think has been the biggest difference in Trump's leadership was Twitter. Okay? The way that a previous leader would communicate with the public was at a press conference.
Yeah.
And then the press grabs it and tells you. Is that not like in 1,000 years ago when only people that could read Latin could read the Bible and they would, and then
they interpreted it in their own ways.
Yeah. So are we not used, as a people, are we not used to hearing direct
communication from the leader of the country?
We're getting a filtered
and oftentimes a
manipulated.
scripted that was written by someone else. Like a White House staffer, for example, would often write the scripts that were then being said to us by Obama or whoever the president might be, and that's a real thing. I think
But like from a practical thing, are we saying that we don't want that?
Well, again, it's not we because we're not America.
Yeah.
I do feel like in America maybe the odds were stacked against Trump to win this because you've got the mainstream media who obviously have always peddled their own objectives, but one of the biggest ones was social media companies. Social media companies actively suppressed those stories about Biden's son, but they would spread anything anti-Trump.
They literally suppressed things that came out of his Twitter account.
I couldn't believe it. When the election was happening, there was news media companies in the United States when Donald Trump made that address where he was saying that he won and all this sort of stuff, who cut him off and were just talking over him speaking, and they're like, no, we need to fact check this stuff. All these things are lies. He's got no proof of voter fraud or anything like that. Like how these media companies, like he was coming out saying, I'm taking this stuff to the High Court.
Yep.
So how is it that
which is a function of their democracy?
That's right, is a function of the democracy, and everyone who is in that situation is allowed to do that.
Yep.
How is a media company allowed to say he's got no proof before the court has decided that?
Yeah.
And actually cut off and just straight up didn't show what the President of the United States was saying?
But I think even worse than that was Twitter literally blocked every third one. I was watching it live. Every third one of his tweets was saying, because it might have influenced the election.
I think they say 40% of people in Western countries now go to social media for their news.
Yeah.
So you've got to say, if those companies, social media companies, are blocking what the news that is shown to 40% of people, that they absolutely influence the election for their own interests. And that's again, you got to question everything.
You got to question everything, and I reckon we leave it there because this has been fucking heavy.
Yeah.
Like, this has been heavy. We're probably going to get taken off YouTube.
Yeah.
But so we're probably going to get our phone calls tapped.
Gonna say algorithm, good example, great example. Have some shots and chill out.
Watch Idiocracy.
Yeah.
For next
week.
For
this week. I'll watch Idiocracy because
like, comment, subscribe.
Yeah.
I am going to come back to you, Josh. I have had thoughts. I'll come back to you. But we'll see you next RDO.
Cheers, guys.